The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 155. Goodbye, Trey Burke. Hello, Drake Harris. And football wraps up spring ball with Saturday scrimmage. That and more on today's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Well, spring practice concluded on Saturday, so now we wait until August for the hype to begin. On today's Michigan Gameday segment, Associate Editor at the Wolverine Michael Spath will be our guest. We'll chat about Saturday's scrimmage and get his thoughts on what transpired during the 15 spring practices. But first, let's get our Wolverine Warmups in. Trey Burke announced on Sunday he was entering the NBA draft. No surprise to anyone. Trey is ready, and we're going to miss him. Thanks for all the memories, Trey. I am certain he has a bright future ahead of him in the NBA. Football picked up its sixth commitment for the class of 2014 on Sunday when four-star wideout Drake Harris from Grand Rapids Christian tweeted he was headed to Ann Arbor. Drake is ranked as one of the top three wide receivers in the class of 2014. Softball swept the Spartans last weekend and will be on the road to Indiana for a doubleheader midweek, then back home for a weekend series with Iowa. Coach Carol Hudgens' Wolverines are ranked number 12 heading into this week's play. Baseball is red hot right now, riding a 9-game winning streak into this week's action. Coach Bakich is turning things around in his first year with this very young team. Hockey's Jacob Trouba was named first-team All-American last week. He was the only freshman named and the first freshman in program history to be named first-team All-American. Well, spring practice is now over. What do we know about this fall's team? Devin Gardner looks good and seems ready to be the leader on this team or one of the leaders. The depth at quarterback will be a concern all season. No one stepped up at the running back position. We have some good depth, but that's about all we can say right now. The offensive line had its moments Saturday, good and bad. It will take this unit time to develop, especially the young interior. But they'll have seniors Taylor Lewan and Michael Schofield that will be leading the way by example. The wideouts are improving, and we finally have three big options at tight end. On the defensive side, Coach Madison says this is not a Michigan defense yet, but it's getting closer. There is depth and talent at every position group. Associate Editor of the Wolverine, Michael Spath, joins me next on Michigan Game Day, and we'll talk spring ball and how this year's team shapes up heading into summer workouts. That's next here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. With us on Michigan Game Day to talk Michigan spring football and, of course, about the spring football game, Associate Editor of the Wolverine, Michael Spath. Great to have you back on the show, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Mike. We have a lot to talk about today.
Well, it was a busy spring. We were all focused on, of course, the end of the Denard era and wanted to know, now that it's Devin Gardner's offense, how that was going to look. And, you know, from what the coaches have been saying and what we saw on Saturday, he looks very comfortable with it, doesn't he?
He certainly does. I mean, I think, the experience that he had a year ago playing those last 5 games, that ought to quell any concerns that Michigan fans or this coaching staff had that, they'd be breaking in a first-time starter. He played in some big games. Obviously, he played against South Carolina in the Outback Bowl and almost rallied his team to a victory there. He played against Ohio State down in the shoe. So he has, tremendous experience coming out of that. And I think we saw the evolution of that this spring. You want to see a guy that steps up and that is the best player on the field. And I think on Saturday, we'll talk about the defense. We'll talk about some other position groups here in a little bit. But when you look at it and say, okay, who was the best player on the field? If you're being objective or if you're being biased, you'd say Devin Gardner was. He made some really nice throws down the sideline, deep, hit his tight ends over the middle. He checked off when he needed to check off and hit a shorter route. He moved around the pocket really comfortably. And the only thing that we didn't see is we didn't see him really take off and run, and that's probably a good thing. They've had too many injuries this spring, but I thought he looked great on Saturday.
The other thing that I noticed is compared to last year already, his technique looked a lot better. His footwork back in the pocket, didn't it?
Yeah, that certainly was something that needed to improve. Just in terms of how when he releases the ball, that was a problem that Denard had a lot too. Was that he'd throw off that back foot. A lot of times those were the interceptions, and Devin just needs to. I mean, every quarterback just needs to have balance in their stance. And really kind of throw in a good position as opposed to when you're trying to throw on the run. I mean, it's one thing when you're trying to throw on the run, but it's another thing when you're in the pocket and you're throwing with off your front foot, or you're dipping too much. I thought that looked outstanding. I thought his ball came out of there as strong as it's ever come out of there. Had a little bit more zip. His deep passes had the proper loft. I mean, it just looked, I don't want to say night and day, but maybe like later in the night and that night compared to where he was a year ago.
And when you listen to him talk, he was being interviewed on BTN several times after the scrimmage. He seems very, very confident in what he's doing.
Without a doubt. I mean, he has become the leader that this team needs him to be. There was a lot of talk maybe previously in his career, this idea that he was, I don't want to say selfish or goofy or what, but just maybe not stepping up into the role that they need of a quarterback. And that's why we didn't see a lot of him was, hey, this isn't my job and I'm not going to really compete for it. I'll go play wide receiver and do something else. And they need him to be the guy that not only leads in the huddle, but leads on the sideline and leads in the practices and in the film room and in the weight room. And he's done all those things. And I think you've just seen a much more mature, you're seeing a kid that's grown up and realizes that Denard's not going to come back. Denard's not going to command the huddle. This is my team. And I think we're starting to see his imprint on this team, what it's going to look like underneath Devin Gardner.
And I think most of us feel very comfortable with Devin Gardner now that we've seen him last year and see what he's done this spring. But to say Michigan is thin at quarterback right now, Michael, is an understatement. Did seeing Brian Cleary in action make you feel any better about the depth at the quarterback position?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. I guess yes and no. He came in there and he got, I'll give him this, as the scrimmage unfolded and he got a little bit more experience and he realized, playing in front of 10,000 people is not much different than playing in front of 100 people. He did seem to, perform a little bit better. He had a nice run, recognized some of the coverages a little bit better. That said, if Devin Gardner goes down and Shane Morris isn't ready and you stick Brian Cleary in there, pretty much every goal and aspiration you have this season goes right out the window. And that's I'm not trying to knock the kid, but he's just not ready to be the starting quarterback at Michigan. Maybe in a couple of years. I mean, he's a walk-on. He's a redshirt freshman. Give him some time to develop. There have been other walk-ons that have developed into starters at Michigan. Heck, Brian Greasy was a walk-on. I know that he was maybe a preferred walk-on, but he was still a walk-on. And he'll have that chance maybe down the road. But if he's in the game for any critical juncture during this season, it's just not going to be pretty, and Michigan can't have that. They've really got to hope that Shane Morris, when he gets here, he's ready to learn as much of the offense as he can, and hopefully early in the season he gets a few chances against Akron and against Central Michigan to get in there, and if he is needed, that he's got at least a little bit of experience. But there have been seasons where Michigan really didn't need its backup quarterback until Chad Henne's senior year, where he got banged up and Ryan Mall came in. I mean, he was playing every single snap as a freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior, and that's happened, numerous times throughout the last 20 years. So if they can get a little lucky and Devin Gardner can stay healthy the whole time, the sky's the limit for this team.
No, I absolutely agree with you. The only thing that makes me nervous is Chad Henne didn't get out of the pocket too much. A big piece of Devin's game is going to be using his feet, so that makes the chances of him getting hurt even better.
It absolutely does. I mean, and that's a great point. And I think we saw that with Denard. I mean, how many times did Denard take a hit, and whether he was in the game the next play or not, I mean, there were a lot of times he was banged up, and certainly when you look at the way that his career finished, the reason that he wasn't the quarterback the last 5 games is because he took a hit, a pretty nasty one against Nebraska, and you're always going to be in a position where you're risking yourself every time that he takes off. And I think with Devin, Al Borges has said this is not going to change our offensive game plan. We're not going to tell the kid to stay in the pocket and never move, because you can still get hurt in the pocket. But I don't think they're going to see him run the ball 20 times. I think you might see a couple designed runs, maybe 5 times a game, and then more of those, a few more times where Devin has the opportunity to scramble. But certainly, yeah, he's at risk every single time, and that's why Shane Morris has to be ready.
Yeah, well, we've got plenty of time to worry about that, and I'm sure the coaching staff is already plenty worried. Quite a few running backs saw action on Saturday, Michael. Thomas Rawls, again, looked pretty good. I thought Dennis Norfleet is going to give us a real nice change of pace back. He had some nice runs. But coming out of spring, has anyone stepped up, or are we in the position of waiting for Fitz to come back and Derek Green to get here?
I think the latter is especially true at that position. I think Thomas Rawls had a couple, as you said, a nice little run or two, but maybe I'm just a negative person or something like that. But when I see a guy in a spring game do something like that, when I can compare him to what I've seen in an actual game, I always revert back to the actual game. It's one thing to see Armaro Darbo make a really nice reception in the first play of the scrimmage on Saturday, because you haven't seen it before. You don't know what that potential is like. Thomas Rawls we saw for about 50 carries a year ago. We saw him against Alabama. We saw him in some big games, and I really didn't see a whole lot. And so that's the player that I think of, and that's the player that I have to be proved otherwise. And only time I'm going to see that is when I see him in the fall, because I don't think going in a scrimmage, Michael Cox looks great in Michigan's spring game a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I need to go see that in a game. In terms of the other guys, you look at like someone like Justice Hayes and Drake Johnson, and we've never really seen them before. Okay, let's say what maybe they have some potential to do. I think Dennis Norfleet was the one that stood out the most, and we saw that a year ago too when he returned kicks. I mean, he has that that ability to make people miss, get upfield and pick up some big gains. I'd like to see him get 3 or 4 or 5 touches a game, whether it's at the running back position, whether he's in the flat and they if they throw him a screen pass or something like that. But I thought he looked the best out of the running backs. But I think what you just said, I mean, Fitz Toussaint is the proven commodity to me. Derek Green is the guy that has the world of potential. I think one of those two guys is going to be starting the opener against Central Michigan, and that is a little bit of a knock on the current guys, but it's also saying that these two are probably far and above better talents than anybody else that Michigan has right now.
Well, in that backfield, it also looks like Coach Borges has a couple of nice battering ram fullbacks, and with the move to the pro-style downhill offense, that really looked pretty good too.
Yeah, I think Siona Huma, he actually caught a pass, and Joe Carriage, they do have a couple guys that have some size. That Stephen Hopkins, they really had some high hopes for, but didn't pan out a year ago. They ended up going with Joe Carriage. They need that guy that lasts. So many times when you look at a play, if you can get one more block, it's a difference between a 2-yard gain and a 10-yard gain. Mike Hart throughout his career really had that guy in front of him. When you look at Chris Perry, he had that guy in front of him. So many of the great Michigan backs and so many of the great Michigan seasons, whether you're talking about Tamanga Biakavatuka or Tyrone Wheatley, is because they had a lead fullback that cleared that one last linebacker out of the way, opened up a hole, and then you let the running back do what he can do. And obviously the results when you talk about some of those players have just been absolutely tremendous.
So all in all, coming out of spring, fullback, running back, we really didn't learn a lot. No one stepped up. I guess the best we can say is a lot of the young guys got reps, and we do have some decent depth back there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to say is that, this is going to sound a little harsh probably, but I think what you've found is that you have some really good backups, is you have some guys that, need to spell the starting running back for 3 or 4 carries or for 3 or 4 plays can do that. And over time, maybe they can develop into more than that. Maybe Justice Hayes, a redshirt sophomore, Drake Johnson, a redshirt freshman, you give them a little more opportunity, they get some confidence, they get a feel for the game, they can develop into a guy. I don't think any of those guys are there right now. That's why I looked at Fitz Toussaint and Derek Green, but even more so Fitz Toussaint. But yeah, there's some depth there, and that's always good to have. You always want people to push other people, and the competition will be pretty strong throughout the fall.
Michael, looking at the wide receiver position coming out of spring, we know what we're going to get from Jeremy Gallon. He and Devin have a good thing going. Drew Dillio, solid slot guy, possession receiver. But the staff seems to really like what they've seen from Darbo and Chesson this spring. Even Jeremy Jackson, I thought, looked pretty good in the spring game. So it's looking a little bit better at the receiver position than maybe some of us thought.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a positive come out of Saturday. I mean, the first play of the scrimmage, as I mentioned, was a 30-yard pass down the sideline. Darbo adjusted really well in the air. Kind of turned his head the right way to find the ball. Came down with it. I think for all the people that are thinking, my goodness, this is a question mark. For that very first play to go the way that it did, you have to be optimistic about what you're going to get out of that position. J.U. Chesson, he looks pretty skinny, but you know what? Mario Manningham was pretty skinny too, and he's actually wearing Manningham's number 86. I think maybe we should stop with the comparisons right there until this kid gets a chance to make some plays. But he's fast, he's athletic, he can get down the field. He seems to have some good hands. We didn't really see a big catch on Saturday, but we've seen some video of scrimmages from earlier in the spring where he's made some really nice grabs in the corner of the end zone. I think with those two guys, and then Gallon, and as you mentioned, Drew Dillio, and they're not really considered, they're obviously not wide receivers, but I think the tight ends are going to play a really big role this year. Obviously Devin Funchess had 15 catches a year ago, 5 touchdowns. He was a big play machine. But what we saw on Saturday was we saw the tight ends get the 3 primary tight ends, A.J. Williams, Devin Funchess, and Jake Butt, got 4 receptions. Jake Butt scored a touchdown. A.J. Williams, who didn't catch a pass last year despite playing extensively, he had like a 4-yard curl route, made a nice little play, showed off some good hands. Devin Funchess had a long reception down the middle and then another shorter gain. I think those are good signs because it means that Devin Gardner is developing a rapport with his tight ends. Those guys can be, both the bailout type player for you. Hey, I need a check down right here, or I just need to pick up 3 or 4 yards. Where's a big body that I can go to? And as we saw with Jake Butt on his touchdown reception and Devin Funchess with his 30-yard catch down the middle, they can be big play targets for you too. And I think when we talk about the passing game and the receivers, yes, some of those other guys looked good, but I think if Michigan utilizes their tight ends a lot more this year, that's going to be a big part of the passing game too.
And the nice thing there is at that tight end position, they're young, but we have some nice competition. It's nice to have 3 options there, isn't it?
It certainly is. I mean, A.J. Williams is not going to be a big-time playmaker for them, but hey, he's going to be in there, and if he catches, a few balls during the year, they're going to have to respect them, and Devin Funchess is going to be the big-time player, but Jake Butt certainly showed some nice hands, and he showed some nice body control. He went up and caught a pass. He took a huge hit afterwards and held onto the ball, so I think that's a really good sign for Michigan.
Well, the one position group we all wanted to get a good look at on Saturday was that offensive line. We know about Michael Schofield. We know about Lawan. We wanted to see these young nasties get in there and get some action. The coaching staff and the players, Devin Gardner even mentioned it's been real nasty in the trenches with these young guys all spring. But, for the most part, they had a few breakdowns, but you had to like what you saw from those guys, too.
I actually didn't like what I saw from those guys. I thought the interior of the offensive line got overpowered pretty consistently throughout the game. I think in the run game, I thought they looked a little bit better. That is a positive. You're right. They got downhill. They maybe won a couple of those important battles. In the pass protection, though, I think the interior really struggled, especially with when Michigan stunted. They seemed to get confused on, the defensive end kind of pulling I don't know. When the defensive end, you know what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to describe it. When the defensive end obviously comes inside, and that's what a stunt is, and the inside tackle goes to the outside, and the whole point of that is to confuse the line and to hopefully get the guard and the tackle to pick up the same guy. And I saw a lot of that on Saturday where Michigan's guards, either Ben Braden and Kyle Kalis, or when Blake Barge was in there, they wouldn't pick up the right man, and all of a sudden you'd have a defensive end making a free run at the quarterback. I think those guys, here's the good thing I take out of it. I think the defensive front seven is going to be really, really good this year, and I think they're further along than the offensive line. The offensive line still has some time. They're gonna take some lumps. The good news is that they don't start off with Alabama this year. They start off with Central Michigan. Obviously, they have a big game against Notre Dame, but it's at home. And the rest of their non-conference schedule, Akron and UConn, are going to be those type of games that they can get their feet wet, really kind of make some big gains along the offensive line. And even if they come out of that 4-game stretch 3-1, they'll be in a much better position to win the Big Ten because of it. And that's not to say that they can't beat Notre Dame. I think they have a really, really good chance just because of how good the defense is going to be this year. We saw a year ago, with Notre Dame, the defense can overcome offense. It certainly helps when you have 6 turnovers. But I think that game will come down to Michigan's defense potentially outplaying Notre Dame's defense.
Well, when we talk about that offensive line, Michael, you hear offensive linemen always talk about chemistry, and it takes time to develop that, especially when you have 3 really young guys at the core of that offensive line. But the good thing, the positive that I take out of it, they had their breakdowns and they gave us some sacks and they had recognition issues, but man, the talent's there. And when you combine that with the summer workouts and then the game action in the fall, the upside there is incredible.
Absolutely, and a sense of urgency will help too. When right now you're going into scrimmage, and yes, you're trying to prove yourself, but it's not, it's not an opposing player opposite you. When your quarterback is actually on the line, actually in a position to get hit, I think sometimes that really kind of dials up the intensity. In fact, Michael Schofield was saying something about, on Saturday, just like, hey, we almost have to have this mindset that we can't let Devin Gardner ever get touched. And because of the quarterback depth, and he's like, trust me, he's like, guys understand that. And he's like, we're going to be ready to bring it when we have to bring it. And I think that is a good sign. And you're right, the talent, Ben Braden at left guard and Kyle Kalis at right guard. I mean, these are 2 kids that are getting talked about in a way that I have not heard young kids get talked about since that 97 team with Hutchinson and Backus. I mean, that's an incredible comparison, but that seems to be the one that's being bandied about pretty consistently, by people in the know that have seen these guys a little bit, more consistently this spring. And for them to make those comparisons when I really trust their opinions speaks volumes about the potential of this group.
Our guest here on Michigan Game Day is the associate editor of the Wolverine, Michael Spath, and we're talking about developments in the spring and, of course, the 15th and final practice, the spring game, on Saturday. On defense, Michael, Coach Madison has talked this spring about generating pass rush with the guys up front without blitzing as much. We won't know until the fall, but right now it looks like that could happen. As you just mentioned a few minutes ago, they looked really good. So talk about that defensive line and who impressed you this spring.
Well, I think all 3 weak side rush ends had strong games or strong scrimmages on Saturday. Frank Clark, there was a play where he bull rushed Michael Schofield, used incredible leverage, got underneath him, kind of, it was almost a Reggie White type of move. I remember watching Reggie White when he was with the Packers. Unfortunately, I don't remember him very much with the Eagles, but I remember him with the Packers, and he used to get lower than offensive tackles and kind of put that forearm out there and almost club them. And these offensive tackles would also be on their heels. I'm surprised more of them didn't fall on their butts and look embarrassed. And that's the play that I saw Frank Clark make. And he talked earlier in the spring about maybe being too big. He's 6'2", 277. He said, maybe I need to lose 10 pounds to get my speed back. But I don't know. The trade-off is that he can overwhelm offensive tackles like that. That's an incredible sign, and that's an incredible asset that he has, because the other guys have said that he still does have that amazing first step, and then he's going to go right around them. Mario Ojemudia, I mentioned earlier on the stunting, about 244 pounds as a sophomore, a lot of speed. They're going to probably use him in a lot of nickel situations to be the opposite bookend of Frank Clark. And then Taco Charlton, the true freshman that enrolled early, man, did he look like a beast out there. 6'6", 265, and he looks like he could add 20 more pounds, but he was huge. He had 2 sacks. He actually probably got a little bit in trouble because he hit the quarterback. Thankfully, it was the third-string quarterback. It wasn't Devin Gardner, or else he probably would have found himself on the bench very quickly. But he looked big. And then the thing that really impressed me was in Michigan's defensive front, they have 2 guys that are kind of more run stuffers, the nose tackle, which is Andre Pipkins and Quentin Washington, and the strong side end, which is played by Keith Heitzman, Matthew Godin. And so then the rush ends, which are the three guys I just mentioned, and then the three technique defensive tackle, which is Jabril Black and Willie Henry. Those guys are supposed to be a little bit quicker, have a little bit more explosiveness, and get in the offensive backfield. And on Saturday, we saw that happen. Jabril Black had a couple of really nice plays, used that first step to kind of slide in between the guard and center and get in the offensive backfield. And then Willie Henry, who's a big kid, over 300 pounds, he showed surprising quickness for that type of size. I think those guys are going to be ones to watch. You asked about who's going to be the dominant pass rusher. It's going to be those weak side ends. There's no doubt in my mind. But after that, look to Jabril Black and look to Willie Henry. I bet you those two guys combined for 8 to 10 sacks this year.
And that's a lot of names you just mentioned. What's nice about that, we know Coach Madison likes to rotate, keep guys fresh, going 110. That is a lot of really young, talented players that he can rotate. A lot of options this year.
That is so true. I mean, I just mentioned, I think, probably 6 or 7 guys, and there are, between the two deep, there are 8, maybe 10 guys that they feel really comfortable with, that they can put in there at any time. I was just joking about this earlier, but you're never going to have a situation where you're going to put all 4 second stringers in at the same time. Now, the funny thing is that you probably could with this group, and you're not going to lose a whole lot because those second stringers are Willie Henry, who's looking really good, Andre Pipkins, who could be a starter at some point this year, Mario Ojemudia. I mean, those are 3 guys right there that if you put them on Indiana, on Purdue, on Penn State, on almost anybody, they're starting in the Big Ten right now. And so, yeah, you have an incredible luxury to have that much depth. Greg Madison has said, as you mentioned, hey, give me 10 plays, as hard as you can go for 10 plays. Stick your hand up in the air, and I will get somebody else in there to go in the next 10 plays. That's going to wear down offensive line. So often they say that an offensive line, if you keep on running the football, is going to wear down a defensive line. I don't think that's going to happen this year.
No, I think we all have to feel really good about the depth and the talent there. If there is a concern, it was a concern to me, the bad news this year coming out of camp was Jake Ryan. Even though we're hearing he might be back in mid-October now, that means that we're going to need to see Thomas Gordon step up. Brendan Byer's been moved back there with Thomas Gordon at linebacker. Even with Jake out, do you still think this is a solid position group for Michigan, as solid as we thought it was going to be?
The strong side end, on the strong side linebacker, and just to correct you, and I know that you know this, but it's Cam Gordon, not Tom Gordon.
I'm sorry, you're right.
At
yes.
The strong side, I think James Ross is going to be that playmaker this year. I have no doubt about that. He looked really, really fast. Had a couple of nice plays in the offensive backfield. The play that actually I was most impressed with, he's playing the weak side position. There's a run that got out to the left. It looked like, I think it was Dennis Norfleet. It looked like he had about a 15-yard play ahead of him, and if he can make a safety miss, maybe goes 40 yards for a touchdown. James Ross is on the opposite side, pursues from the backside, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here's this Dennis Norfleet fast, probably one of the fastest players on the team. Looks like he's about to get upfield, and James Ross just comes and covers like maybe 4 or 5 yards in a matter of a split second, boom, hits him, knocks him down. That play's 4-yard gain. Now, the offense probably says, hey, we got a 4-yard gain out of it, but it could have been a 15-yard play, and it isn't because James Ross just comes, flying into the play and makes it. That got me really excited because that's the type of athleticism and speed that Jake Ryan brought a year ago, and that they really hadn't had at the other linebacker positions. And so I'm really excited about that. Desmond Morgan in the middle, competing with Joe Bolden. I think you're going to get, a very solid player there that's going to clean things up. I hate to say it because I know people don't like to give Michigan State any credit, but I think Max Bullough from Michigan State is the best middle linebacker I've seen since probably, those Ohio State glory days where they had Katzenmoyer and James Laurinaitis. He is a really impressive player. In Michigan, Kenny Demons last couple years has been good, but not great. He's not been at Max's level. And I think Desmond Morgan and Mike Bolden has that potential to be that guy that, hey, if we're going to run the ball in the middle of the field, this guy's going to clean up everything. We're going to funnel the ball to him, and he's going to make every single stop. And those guys have the size, and they have the understanding to make those plays. Yeah, strong side. I mean, that's the position that Jake Ryan, played and that he's out. Brendan Byer made the move. He's the one that started with the ones, and I got to say, I don't agree with it. I thought I didn't think he made any plays on Saturday. He's big. He's 254 pounds. He's getting prepared to be a rush end. I think maybe he's a little bit too big. Ideally, maybe he could lose 10 pounds going into the off season, or after the off season, because he needs to get a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. I thought Cam Gordon, though, they've talked really highly about him. I think the first play he's in the game, they call a backside blitz. He comes between the tight end and the tackle, and if they were allowed to hit the quarterback, that quarterback would have been going down. Instead, they had to blow the play dead. A couple minutes later, he does the same thing again. I think he's going to be used in nickel situations and maybe used on first and second down too, because he made a really nice play on Dennis Norfleet, held outside containment and got Norfleet for a 4-yard loss. So I don't think they're going to be. They're going to lose something without Ryan. Obviously, the guy's was probably one of the 2 or 3 best defensive players in the Big Ten, hands down this year. Had the chance to be that galvanizing force. I compared him a little bit to, I think, Manti Te'o last year. I think Manti Te'o made everybody on the defense better because of how solid he was. And I thought Jake Ryan had the potential, and they're going to lose that. But I think the front seven is going to be really, really solid. And if a guy like Frank Clark can step up and have a huge season and get 10 sacks, they're not going to miss Jake as much as we think they are.
Well, Michael, let's talk about that secondary now. Blake Count has sat out contact drills this spring. We know he's coming back. He's going to be healthy. But the secondary appears to be deeper than it has in the last few years. How do you think the 2 deep shapes up back there coming out of spring?
I think that defensively right now, they're young, but Greg Madison has to from, as we talked about earlier, the defensive line, the linebackers, now the secondary, just how deep they are. We saw on Saturday, you've got Raymond Taylor and Courtney Avery, who were the guys that finished the year starters last season, with J.T. Floyd out in the bowl game, and Avery has a lot of experience in the nickelback. I mean, you've got 2 guys there with a lot of experience. Blake Count is coming back. He's going to be 100% by the time the opener against Central Michigan, and I have complete confidence that he'll win a starting job. Delonte Hollowell, still a young guy. He looked a lot better than I thought. He's a guy that played a lot on special teams. They kind of maybe pegged him as just a special teams type player, but he got some runs with the ones on Saturday and looked really good. Then you've got Ross Douglas and DeMonte Thomas, 2 true freshmen that they are really high on. I think there's a belief that if we lose one guy, we're not going to be in trouble because we can stick the next guy in there. And then at safety, they're really high on Thomas Gordon. He's kind of taken over that Jordan Kovacs type leadership role. And Jared Wilson, they're pretty high on too. I think the one thing about safety that, again, I go back to my show me state, is I just need to see someone start making some plays back there. Thomas Gordon has a lot of experience. He's entering his 3rd year as a starter. They talk about his leadership. They talk about how physical he's become. You see him on the field, and he looks like he could bench press a truck. But he hasn't made a lot of plays in his career. He doesn't have. I think he has 3 interceptions. Doesn't have a whole lot of pass breakups. He's never been someone that patrolled center field like you're used to, like a Marcus Ray. Jared Wilson, they say that that's a role for him, but I just need to see it. I can't say that these guys are going to be the ones that all of a sudden make us think of the glory days of Michigan safeties until I see it. And I think that's the one thing with that position more than any other on the defense is that we just haven't seen a lot of big plays from the safeties yet. And until we do, hey, if they do what they did a year ago, where they keep everything in front of them, that's great. But there's going to be some moments in games where they have to have a big interception. They have to get off the field. They have to turn field position around for their offense, and that's the moment that secondary has to step up.
Well, the good thing coming out of spring ball, heading into the summer and into the fall, we haven't been able to say this in a long time, Michael. When you look at every position group on that defense, in the trenches, at the linebacking core, and in the secondary, there is, for the first time in a long time, depth with talent.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think that Greg Madison has to be a little bit salivating right now. I mean, sure, he would love to have a few more proven players, but he has more talent than he's had in any of his years previously, and he's got, as you said, more depth. And there's just so many more guys you can throw in there, and they're going to get better and better as the season goes on. And then they're bringing in a freshman class that some of those guys are already here, like DeMonte Thomas and Taco Charlton, but they're bringing in some really, really good players again. And so, yeah, I think we're almost to the point where we can start expecting the Michigan defenses to be, best in the country. And they have actually been top 20 defenses the past 2 years, and they've probably played above their talent. Now, when you give them that talent and you give them that depth, I think we can start. Like I said, the expectations need to go up. Top 10 defenses, best in the Big Ten defenses. Maybe not Alabama quite yet, because that is an entirely different level that I don't think anybody has seen in college football in quite a while. But maybe the equivalent of an LSU type defense, which I think is just a step below Alabama. I think Michigan can be really, really good, and there's probably going to be a couple games this year that they're going to win with their defense alone.
Coming out of spring, on either side of the ball, whose stock really jumped?
That's a good question. Offensively, I think it's a little, like I said, a little bit too early still on Darboh or Chesson, because we just haven't seen enough of them. But I think one of those guys will be a breakout player, because I think they have to be. I think Devin Funchess, when you look at the offensive players, I know he had the 15 catches last year. Everybody knows who he is. But you take his 15 catches, I think he could have 45 to 50 catches this year and could have 10 touchdowns. I think he has that type of potential. I think they're going to use him in a way that they're going to make defenses have to account for him on every single play. So if in a way, I pick him as my breakout player, even though he had a pretty big year a season ago. And then defensively, man, there's so many to choose from. I think James Ross is going to lead this team in tackles for loss. I think Frank Clark is going to lead this team in sacks. Both guys have done a little bit already in their careers, but are going to have even bigger years. I think Cam Gordon is going to emerge at that strong side linebacker position and fill in for Jake Ryan quite nicely. And the one guy that I actually look like in the secondary that I'm really excited about is I think Raymond Taylor is going to be really good. And what's going to be really interesting about Michigan's cornerback situation, for me anyway, is if Blake Countess comes back and can be the guy that he was towards the end of his freshman season in 2011 and improves upon that, the quarterbacks are going to have an interesting choice. Do I throw at Raymond Taylor and give this guy who has some really natural playmaking skills a chance to pick me off, or do I avoid Raymond Taylor and throw to Blake Countess, who still has those things? Very rarely has Michigan had two playmaking cornerbacks at the same time. And you look at when Charles Woodson was there, and they had Andre Weathers across from him, and Andre Weathers was a solid guy, but not really a big-time playmaker. You go back and look at Marlon Jackson. When Marlon Jackson was there, they had Morgan Trent, and they had Leon Hall, and guys that are very good, but those guys would develop into playmakers down the road. And so now you have two really solid cornerbacks. I think that's going to be a special position for Michigan in 2013.
Michael, biggest concerns on offense that you see coming out of the spring?
Well, the depth of quarterback is huge. I think Gardner is so good that maybe those concerns are allayed a little bit, but that would be my that's where I'm kind of worried. At the interior offensive line, I think it's got a lot of growing up to do. And then I look at the running back situation, and I just think that I think that we're going to have to wait until Fitz Toussaint gets back. I don't think there's anybody that I saw that could be a number one running back that's 20 carries a game on that side of the ball.
And then what about on the defensive side? I know we've talked glowingly about the depth and the talent on the defense, but what is if there are any major concerns there?
Probably the one that I mentioned earlier, and I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent, but just safety. I just need to see these guys make some plays. And I need to see them keep the ball in front of them, too. I mean, Jordan Kovacs was so good at keeping the ball in front of him, and that obviously led to a lot of the success of the defense a year ago. And that needs to be something that gets repeated this year. Keep the big plays to a minimum and make some big plays yourself. And it's kind of getting a little nitpicky, because I think they're going to be really good. But until I see it, I'm just not sure what those guys are going to bring yet.
The one last thing, Michael, we don't talk about the special teams that much. Brendan Gibbons, we expect he's going to be very solid again his senior season. But Will Hagerup, other than Coach Hoke addressing it at the beginning of camp that, yes, he's still suspended, I didn't see or hear a lot more about that. What's your take on that whole situation?
There hasn't been anything real strong like one way or the other. But something that did kind of emerge is 2 years ago, or I guess it was going to be a year ago, the policy that Brady Hoke enacted with Darryl Stoneham was, hey, this guy has got in trouble. We don't really think that he deserves to play. He hasn't earned the opportunity to play this year, so we're going to redshirt him. And he's going to have to take the whole year off and do everything behind the scenes and show up to every single practice and do everything right. And if he screws up once, he's gone. And unfortunately, he screwed up and he was gone. I think you could see a similar policy enacted with Will Hogrup, and maybe going forward with anybody that gets himself into trouble multiple times is you're given a red shirt, you do everything you're supposed to do, okay, and the following year you can come back and play. You don't, you're done. And I think that's probably a pretty strong way to go, and that's kind of what we think is going to happen with Will Hogrup. In terms of the rest of special teams, you know, the luxury you have is that Matt Weil has been punting. He was the pooch punter a year ago. He stepped in the bowl game when Hogrup was out. He can be a guy that averages, you know, maybe not quite the leg, but he can probably average 41, 42 yards per punt. And then Brendan Gibbons, I mean, let's face it, we talk about, I don't know why we don't talk about him in the way that we talk about a Remy Hamilton or a J.D. Carlson or a Mike Gillette or a Garrett Rivas. But this is one of the, when you look at his numbers, probably one of the 5 best kickers in the history of Michigan football. And I think that's pretty, you know, that's something that we need to point out a little bit more often is how well this kid has done the last couple of years. And Michigan should feel really, really good at the place kicking position.
Well, spring football's over, and we have, 3 or 4 months to wait now. The expectations are going to be high, and they'll probably be ratcheted up when all of the preseason magazines hit the stands. It looks to be right now that this is going to be an exciting season of Michigan football.
Yeah, I think we can start getting excited and start dialing up the expectations. I know that I was asked just the other day what my barometer for success is, and for me it comes down to one thing: are they playing the first weekend in December in Indianapolis? If they are, then I think Michigan has been at least half accomplished because they're playing for the Big Ten title. But anything less than that, and I don't think this season is successful. Whether that means that they're 9-3 in that game, or 10-2, or 11-1, they need to be playing in that game in Indianapolis, and hopefully, I think there's a really decent chance that they're playing against Ohio State, and they have the double whammy of playing against them the final regular season game and then in the Big Ten championship. I think that'd be awesome. I know a lot of people don't want to see it, and they're hoping that when the Big Ten announces divisions here, new divisions here fairly soon, that Michigan and Ohio State are in the same ones, so that never happens again. But I would like to see it at least once before they get rid of the current format. I'd like to see those two teams play back to back.
Oh, I think there's a lot of fans that agree with that. Our guest on our show today has been Associate Editor of the Wolverine, Michael Spath. We've been wrapping up spring football, talking about the 15th practice, the spring football game. Now we just wait. And Michael, as always, it's been great to have you on the show, and we look forward to the next time.
All right, sounds good, Mike. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again to Associate Editor Michael Spath from the Wolverine for being our guest today and helping us wrap up spring football talk. Coming up next, all of the latest news on the Wolverine athletic scene on Wolverine Quick Hits here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, Sunday, the day after Grand Rapids Christian receiver Drake Harris endured the cold and snow at Michigan Stadium, the 2014 prospect committed to U of M. Harris announced his decision on Twitter around 1 p.m., tweeting just officially committed to the University of Michigan. Though he's the 6th recruit in the class, he's instantly the highest profile and maybe the most important. His talent has the 6'3", 175-pounder, ranked as Scout.com's number 3 receiver nationally, a rare designation for a player from a northern state. So congratulations and welcome, Drake Harris. Freshman shortstop Sierra Romero of the number 12 ranked University of Michigan softball team won her 4th consecutive Big Ten Freshman of the Week honor, the conference announced on Monday. Romero has taken home the weekly award 6 times in all during the first 10 weeks of the season. The shortstop aided U of M's 3-game series sweep over Michigan State over the weekend by reaching base in 10 of 14 plate appearances and scoring 4 runs. She belted grand slams in back-to-back games, giving her 8 runs batted in for the series. Romero is just the 4th U of M player to hit 3 or more grand slams in one season, joining senior Ashley Lane, who had 3 in 2011, and former Wolverines Marley Powers and Samantha Findley, who did it in 2008. The Wolverines were in action Tuesday with a doubleheader against Indiana and will be home this weekend for a 3-game series with Iowa. They head into this week's play ranked number 12 in the country and in first place in the Big Ten. In baseball news, sophomore Matt Ogden pitched 6 innings of scoreless relief as the University of Michigan baseball team scored multiple runs in 3 different innings in an 8-1 win over Penn State Sunday afternoon at the Wilpon Complex, home of Ray Fisher Stadium. Michigan has now won 9 games in a row and sweeps consecutive Big Ten series for the first time since 2008. The Wolverines 20-14 overall heading into this week's action with a 7-2 record in the Big Ten. Freshman Jacob Trouba from Rochester, Michigan, who was 3rd in scoring for the University of Michigan hockey team this past season, has been named to the first team on the CCM Hockey All-America West team, selected by the American Hockey Coaches Association. Trouba is not only the lone freshman on this year's team, he is the first freshman in the history of U of M hockey to be named a first-team All-American. Trouba recently signed with the Winnipeg Jets of the National Hockey League, making him the first player to turn pro after his freshman season at U of M since Max Pacioretty made the jump 5 years ago. So congratulations to Jacob Trouba from Rochester, Michigan. Don't forget to become a member here at Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Visit our site at www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. We're heading into the quiet time of the year, but that doesn't mean there won't be plenty of things to talk about on the Wolverine athletic scene. So visit www.gbmwolverine.com to become a member and stay up to date on all of the latest maize and blue news and conversation. A reminder that our show app is now available in the Android store, that's at Amazon.com, and for Apple users in the iTunes store, so check it out. Our listener lines are open 24/7 at 313-263-4842. I invite you to give us a ring anytime and leave your comments on any maize and blue topic. You can also email us at the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. I'll have both the phone number and email address on my show notes page if you don't have a pen or a pencil handy. Thanks again to this week's guest, Associate Editor of the Wolverine, Michael Spath. Always great to have Michael on the show. Next week, we're going to have our basketball season review show. We hope to have Wolverine beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News with us and get his always interesting thoughts on Michigan basketball, so we hope you'll be back for that. So until then, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!